Hello everyone. So welcome to session 6 of IS Baba's rapid revision series of 500 high probable topics for prelims 2020. I'm Preetham Reddy and I'll be dealing with 15 important topics which are crucial for prelims examination this year in each session. So first important topic of this session is Ashgabat Agreement, which is a multimodal transport agreement. Okay, so this Ashgabat agreement is a multimodal transport agreement between Oman, Iran, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan and India. So this Ashgabat agreement is an important international transport and transit corridor. So it's a important international transport and transit corridor, and this facilitates transportation of goods between Central Asian region and Persian Gulf. Okay, so this international transport and transit corridor, it facilitates trade between Central Asian region and Persian Gulf. Also, this Ashgabat agreement is important for India because it provides connectivity with Central Asian countries and also helps in improving the trade and commercial ties. At the same time, it gives push to the international north-south transport corridor, that is international north-south transport corridor. And also remember that this Ashgabat is a capital city of Turkmenistan. So Ashgabat is a capital and the largest city of Turkmenistan in Central Asia. And next important point is Turkmenistan is the depository state of Ashgabat agreement. So we'll see who are the founding members. So there are four important founding members. One is Iran, second is Oman, third is Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan. Next important topic is Lapis Lazuli corridor. Okay, so this Lapis Lazuli corridor, it begins from Afghanistan, especially from Herat province and Faryab. So from Faryab province. So it starts from Afghanistan, then it passes through Turkmenistan, then it passes through the Caspian Sea. And finally it arrives at Baku, which is the capital of Azerbaijan, and from there it connects to important cities of Georgia and also ports like Poti. Okay, and then finally it enters Turkey and finally ends up in Europe. So this Lapis Lazuli begins from Afghanistan and ends in Europe. And also it's a transit and trade cooperation among Afghanistan, Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Turkey. Okay, and it is important to note that this Lapis Lazuli is a 2000 years old trade route. So it is derived from the historic export route when Afghanistan's Lapis Lazuli and other semi-precious stones were exported to different countries. Next important topic is International North-South Transport Corridor. So this International North-South Transport Corridor is important as like it connects India with Iran, Azerbaijan and Russia. Okay, also it connects Indian Ocean and Persian Gulf to the Caspian Sea. So this International North-South Transport Corridor is a 7,200 kilometer long multi-mode network, that is ship, then rail route, then road route. So it's a multi-mode network, okay, and it helps to facilitate transport of freight between India, Iran, Afghanistan, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Russia, Central Asia and Europe. Okay, so you can see all this map. So how this particular international north-south transport corridor is important to connect with Central Asian countries and finally to the European country. Okay, so the objective of the corridor is to increase trade connectivity with the major cities. So you have to remember some important locations like Moscow, Tehran, Baku, Bandar Abbas, Astrakhan, Bandar Anzali. So try to locate all those kind of locations in your map. Okay, and member states, no need to remember member states because almost like India, Iran, Russia, Turkey, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Armenia, Belarus, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Oman, Ukraine, Syria. So all of these countries are the member state, but observer member only one, that is Bulgaria. Okay, so this International North-South Transport Corridor, it connects Indian Ocean and Persian Gulf to the Caspian Sea. So next we'll do some mapping with the Persian Gulf and some important ports. So already I said you have to remember some important locations like Baku, Astrakhan. At the same time, Iran's Caspian Sea ports such as Astara, Bandar Anzali, Amirabad. Okay, so there might be a question. Questions can come in prelims. And Astrakhan is a port of Russia. Okay, and Baku is the capital city and port of Azerbaijan. And it is important to note that Farzad B gas field, where India and Iran were planning to develop this particular Farzad B gas field, is located somewhere here in Persian Gulf. Okay, somewhere here. And this Persian Gulf is surrounded by 8 countries, one Oman, two United Arab like UAE, three Qatar, fourth one Bahrain, fifth Saudi Arabia, sixth Kuwait, seventh Iraq, and eighth Iran. So this Persian Gulf is surrounded by 8 important countries. Also try to locate Gulf of Oman, Strait of Hormuz. So this Strait of Hormuz is between Persian Gulf and Gulf of Oman. Okay, and the Strait of Hormuz is one of the important strategic location as it provides the only sea passages from the Persian Gulf to the open ocean and is one of the world's most strategically important choke point. Okay, so try to locate all those important and also Shat al Arab. Okay, so you can just locate in your atlas. So next important topic is inner line permit. So inner line permit is an official travel document issued by the government of India to grant inward travel. So to grant inward travel of Indian citizen into certain protected areas for a limited period. So it's for a limited period. So in simple words, it is obligatory for Indians who are residing outside of some states to obtain permission prior to entering to certain protected areas. So currently Arunachal Pradesh, Mizoram and Nagaland needs this inner line permit. So if you want to travel and if you are an outsider and don't belong to this Arunachal Pradesh, Mizoram or Nagaland, in order to travel to these states you require a inner line permit which is issued by Government of India. And this document is issued under this Bengal Eastern Frontier Regulation 1873, and this particular inner line permit is for travel purpose solely. That is, visitors are not allowed to purchase any property in this region. However, there might be a different set of rules for long term visitors, and also they are not valid for central government employees and security forces. Okay, so security forces and central government employees can visit, and visitors who like are issued with inner line permit, it is just for travel purposes only. So next important topic is protected area permit and restricted area permit. So both this protected area permit and restricted area permit comes under or declared under foreigners order 1963 and foreigners order 1958. So in foreigners order 1958 there is a provision of protected area, and foreigners order 1963 there is a provision of restricted area. Okay, so under this restricted area earlier entire Andaman and Nicobar Island and also some parts of Sikkim were declared like restricted area. Okay, so like people or foreigners whoever want to go to this particular region were supposed to take permission or were not allowed. Okay, later on, now recently Union Home Ministry decided to lift these restrictions so that it can bring some boost to the tourism sector. Okay, so right now foreigners no longer need a restricted areas permit in order to enter Andaman and Nicobar and also like Sikkim. Okay, so foreigners no longer need a restricted area permit to visit like some inhabited islands in the Andaman and Nicobar chain. Also, it is important to note that protected area permit, okay, the areas which are falling between the inner line and the international border of the state. So usually these are the states where these protected areas have some kind of borders with different state or countries. So Arunachal Pradesh Himachal Pradesh, Jammu Kashmir, Manipur, Mizoram, Nagaland, Rajasthan, Sikkim, Uttarakhand. So all these states which have some kind of inner line or shares international border, so they have some protected areas. And in order to reach such like protected areas, like usually it is restricted for the foreigners and the people. Okay. So next important topic for the day is Bonn Challenge. Okay, so this Bonn Challenge is a global effort to bring 150 million hectares like of the world deforested and degraded land. Okay, so to bring deforested and degraded land into restoration. So it aims to restore the degraded and deforested land, and they want to restore around 150 million hectares by 2020. So it's a global effort, and also it also aims that by 2030 350 million hectares of deforested and degraded land into restoration. And this particular Bonn challenge was launched in 2011 by Germany and IUCN, and later on this was endorsed and extended by the New York Declaration on Forest at the 2014 UN Climate Summit. So remember, it was launched in 2011 by Germany and IUCN, and later on endorsed and extended by the New York Declaration on Forests during the 2014 UN Climate Summit. Okay, and underlying the Bonn Challenge is the forest landscape restoration approach. So simple question can be asked by UPSC that forest landscape restoration approach is a part of, so it's a part of Bonn Challenge, which actually aims to restore ecological integrity at the same time improve human well-being through multifunctional landscapes. So this is what the forest landscape restoration does. So it takes care of both restoration of ecological areas as well as improve human well-being. Okay. So India joined voluntary Bonn Challenge pledge during the 2015 Paris Climate Change Agreement, which was held in conference of party during 2015, and India openly like increased its pledge to bring into restoration 13 million hectares of degraded land and deforested land by 2020. So India said it will bring, or it will try to bring or try to restore 13 million hectares of degraded and deforested land by 2020, and earlier it had told that another 8 million hectares will be done by 2030. However, in the recent UN Climate Action Summit and UNCCD, India agreed, or India increased the target to 13 million hectares plus 13 million hectares. So 13 million hectares by 2020, which is already met, and now it increased 8 million hectares to 13. Next important topic is the COP13 Convention for on Migratory Species, which was held in Gandhinagar, India. Okay, so this year this particular COP13 Convention on Migratory Species is important. So it was held in Gandhinagar, Gujarat, and major theme of this particular COP13 is migratory species connect the planet and together we welcome them home. Okay, so it is dealing with migratory species, and this logo is quite important. Okay, because in this logo we can see there is a gibi bird, that is Great Indian Bustard, which is the mascot for this convention on migratory species. Okay, so gibi bird, so Great Indian Bustard is the mascot. At the same time you can see a logo inspired by Kollam art. Okay, Kollam is like a rangoli. Okay, so Kollam art is a traditional art form from like southern India. So it's a kind of rangoli. So you can see here, we can see humpback whale. Second thing is we can see marine turtles, and a bird which is Amur falcon. Okay, so this year it becomes important to know about all these species. 1, Great Indian Bustard. 2, humpback whale. 3 marine turtles, and 4 Amur falcon. So we will be dealing with all these 4 important species. So next is Great Indian Bustard. Okay. So this Great Indian Bustard is IUCN critically endangered. Okay, it's a critically endangered species, and it is under Appendix 1 of Convention on Migratory Species. At the same time, it is protected under Section 1 of Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Okay, and this Great Indian Bustard is found only in India and Pakistan. Okay, that's the reason this Great Indian Bustard exhibits transboundary movements. That's why we need better cooperation in order to like protect these species. Okay, in India this gibi are found in Rajasthan, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh. Okay, so remember this, in India this gibi bird, that is Great Indian Bustard, are found in Rajasthan, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh. And few important points we have to know, that gibi is one of the heaviest flying birds. So one, it is one of the heaviest flying birds which are endemic to Indian subcontinent. Since it is also found in Pakistan, it is endemic to Indian subcontinent. Two, they are primarily like terrestrial birds. So they are terrestrial birds. So you can see in this picture, they are found in semi-arid region. Okay, that's the reason, like kind of dry grasslands or terrestrial locations, this is the habitat or habitation of this particular gibi bird. And major threats are high voltage lines and loss of grasslands and habitats, and also hunting. Okay, and try to remember few important protected areas which were recently in news associated with Great Indian Bustard. One, Desert National Park. So Desert National Park in Rajasthan. Okay. 2, Rolla Paddu. Okay, so Rolla Paddu Wildlife Sanctuary, which is in Andhra Pradesh. So you can remember. So simple question can come like Pakua Wildlife Sanctuary is in which particular state was previous year question paper. So like that we can expect Rolla Paddu Wildlife Sanctuary is in Andhra Pradesh, and also Great Indian Bustard National Park in Maharashtra. Okay, try to remember these protected areas: Desert National Park near Jaisalmer, Rajasthan; Rolla Paddu Wildlife Sanctuary, Andhra Pradesh; and Great Indian Bustard National Park, Maharashtra. So next important animal which is in the Kollam art is the humpback whale. Okay, so this humpback whale can be a probable question this year. So IUCN status is least concern. It is found almost around everywhere around the world. Okay, and humpback whale is one of the 4 species of baleen whales which are found in Indian waters, and it is one of the least studied species in India. So it is the least studied species, so we don't have more details about this particular species. Okay, but still it was like some attention was given during the Convention on Migratory Species, because we don't know what is the threat, and right now it is still least concern under IUCN status. So next important topic is marine turtles, which we saw in the Kollam art. So there are 7 species of marine turtles: hawksbill, leatherback, Kemp's ridley, green turtle, loggerhead, and olive ridley, and flatback turtle. And out of these 7, 5 are found in Indian coast. So olive ridley, which we would have read many times, green turtle, hawksbill, loggerhead, and leatherback. Okay, and it is important to note that except the loggerhead, the remaining 4 species nest along the Indian coast, that is mainland Indian coast. Okay, so only the loggerhead nests in Andaman and Nicobar region. And in India, above sea turtles, so these marine turtles are protected under Indian Wildlife Protection Act under Schedule 1, and Part 2 deals with the marine animals. Okay, so these marine turtles are important. So you can see in the figure. So leatherback is one of the right now the biggest ones compared to all the marine animals. okay, and it is found in Indian coast. So we will just deal with the leatherback and olive ridley because it was recently in news, and you can read about like loggerhead and oxbill also, okay, or we'll try to cover those things in further sessions, okay. So two important marine turtles are very important, that is leatherback turtle and olive ridley turtle. So we'll see leatherback turtle. Okay, so leatherback turtle IUCN status is vulnerable. Obviously, it is under the part of Schedule 1 of Indian Wildlife Protection Act. So this marine like leatherback turtle inhabits the tropical and temperate waters from Pacific to North Atlantic and throughout the Indian Ocean. Okay, so these marine turtle is found. So it is, since it is like under the CMS, that is Convention on Migratory Species, so these are not endemic. Okay, they have some kind of migratory movements. So they are moving from like tropical and temperate waters and found both in Pacific, Atlantic and also throughout the Indian Ocean. And one important thing, it follows the longest migratory route known for the turtles. Okay, and in India, as I said, leatherback nesting is specific only to the Andaman and Nicobar. Okay, and Little Andaman and Southern Great Nicobar Islands, they have the potential nesting sites. Okay, and we already saw in this figure that leatherback sea turtles are the largest of all living turtles. Okay, and it is the fourth heaviest modern reptile. Okay, so finally, like we'll see olive ridley turtle. So olive ridley turtle, again IUCN status is vulnerable. Okay, and this olive ridley is endemic to Pacific coast of Mexico, Central Asia, sorry, Central America and India. So they are endemic to Pacific coast of Mexico, Central America and India. And obviously you might be knowing that olive ridley have this nesting uh, in like regions of coastal parts of Odisha and Andhra Pradesh. Okay, so this olive ridley turtles are known as nocturnal nester. Okay, so usually they lay eggs during night. Okay, so they are, that's why called as nocturnal nester. Okay, and this like leatherback is the largest one, and this olive ridley is the smallest and the most abundant of all sea turtles. Okay, so the coast of Odisha in India is the largest mass nesting site for the olive ridley, followed by coast of Mexico and Costa Rica. That's why it becomes important to protect this olive ridley nesting sites in Odisha. Okay, and this olive ridley usually inhabit warm waters of Pacific, Atlantic and Indian Oceans. So try to remember this and try to remember some protected areas. Okay, so some protected areas are Bahuda Roorkee, Bahuda Roorkee of Odisha, and also Rushikulya, right? Rushikulya Roorkee, or sorry, Roorkee. Okay, so Bahuda Roorkee of Odisha and Rushikulya Roorkee of Odisha. So these two are major sites. Okay, and also other major nesting sites in Odisha is Garimata Beach. You might be knowing. So Garimata, it is also a largest mass nesting site for this olive ridley turtles, and Rushikulya Roorkee coast and the mouth of like Debi River. Even these are very important. So you can remember next is like Garimata region of or Garimata beach of Odisha. Okay, so next important concept is Aribada. So this Aribada is a Spanish term and it is a unique mass nesting behavior, right? So I was talking about mass nesting in this Bahuda Roorkee, Rushikulya Roorkee and Garimata. So on the same lines, this mass nesting behavior, we call it by the term Aribada. Okay, and this Aribada, only two species of marine turtles display this Aribada or that unique mass nesting behavior. Okay, and those two are olive ridley and Kemp ridley sea turtle. So already I said like out of seven, we have this Kemp's ridley also, and olive ridley is the one which is found in India, and both olive ridley and Kemp ridley like display this unique behavior called aribada. Okay, so we'll see what is the difference between olive ridley and Kemp ridley. Already we know all about olive ridley. So it is endemic to Pacific coast of Mexico, Central America and India, and it is known to be a nocturnal nester, right? However, this Kemp ridley is endemic to Gulf of Mexico, and like it is usually display this unique aribada technique during the diurnal aribadas. Okay, so they lay eggs during the, like it can be during daytime or night. Okay, and Amur falcons. So last topic for the day, Amur falcons. So we saw in the Colomad there was like a bird, so it was Amur falcon, and this Amur falcon is also a least concern. Okay, so both humpback whale and Amur falcon both are least concern. However, they are migratory species, and still like we have to protect this species. So even this species is part of Schedule 1 of Wildlife Protection Act 1972, and it is a small raptor of the falcon family. So this Amur falcons are part of falcon family, and even the habitat of Amur falcon is like Gibi bird itself. So Gibi has habitat of grasslands and some semi-arid areas. The same way Amur falcons can be found in kind of tropical grasslands like savanna and also in wetland region. Okay, and every year Amur falcon festival, right? So Amur falcon festival is held in Nagaland, and every year Amur falcons take a journey covering many countries like China, Mongolia, Russia, and India, finally to reach Somalia. Okay, so usually this bird, which is a raptor, and it is a size of almost like pigeon. Okay, so this takes a very long journey covering many countries like China, Mongolia, Russia, and India, and finally it reaches Somalia. Okay, and it while this migratory journey, okay, it makes its home in Nagaland, and the bird has one of the longest and most fascinating migratory paths in the avian world, that is from Mongolia and Russia to South Africa. Okay, and usually this like Amur falcons have been considered as a delicacy in Nagaland, and they are widely hunted and sold in Nagaland market. Okay, and one important protected area what we have to remember, and which was in news recently, is the Doyang Lake and Doyang Reservoir. Okay, so recently center decided to develop this Doyang Lake and or Doyang Reservoir, which is in Nagaland, and it is very famous as a roosting site for the Amur falcons. Okay, so this Doyang Reservoir is also an ecotourism spot for bird watchers, and you can remember that even I think Amur falcon conservation week was hosted recently in Nagaland. Okay, so try to remember all these species which are important because they were discussed in the convention on migratory species. Okay, so thank you. Do comment if you have any queries, and do subscribe to IS Baba's channel. And PDF usually we are providing link in the description, so do check. And with regarding to volume control, and also like some people are facing some technical glitches with accessing the video. So I think the problem is in YouTube itself. Okay, so try like surfing through Safari or Chrome when you are accessing Android devices. Okay, thank you.